Cool. All right. So we're talking about RWAs today and why they're going to zero. Cool. Before we get started, Plume. What are we? I'm Chris. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Plume. We run the biggest blockchain, the biggest network, and the biggest ecosystem around RWAs and real things. We'll talk a little bit about what that means in a second. Maybe to get started, here's the three of us as the founders of the team. We're a very diverse group. It's three Asian males that started the company. But we raised some money a little bit earlier last year. We raised $10 million in our seed from folks like Han Ventures and Galaxy, Superscript, and a bunch of folks like that. In our seed, I think it was in Q1 of 24. And then we raised our Series A sometime last year. I think it was late 24 as well, around September-ish. And so from Apollo and Brevin and a bunch of trad folks. And so that was kind of the mix, to start off with a little bit of crypto and then more trad. Right? So that's kind of the short story. We launched our token earlier this year. Obviously, I can't tell you to buy, but if there's, feel free to take a look. And then we've done this all very, very quickly. So it's been about 18 months since we started the company today, and so we've gone from kind of zero to mainnet to token out and everything in this amount of time. So that's a little bit about who we are. And it's kind of surreal. We were invited last, about a month ago to go to the White House to meet President Trump to talk a little bit about crypto and tokenization, all this kind of stuff. And so just kind of funny to see all this happen very quickly and come together, where it was an idea a little bit ago, and now here we are doing a thing. And so, this is the dinner at the time. Unfortunately, I was hoping more for this kind of thing. So anyway, didn't get that, but that's enough about us. So let's go a little bit about why RWAs are going to zero and what we're talking about here. So before we get started, let's talk a little bit about what RWAs are and what they mean, right? RWAs are very simple. RWAs are a token that represents something in the real world, right? So you have the real world today that has X, Y, Z things, and so maybe it's currencies, maybe it's fiat, maybe it's bonds, equities, doesn't matter, but you have some digital token that's a representation of that, right? So that's what this means today. And the reason why everyone's hyped about RWAs is because of this. So when we started the project, right, we had, X, Y, Z amount of TVL here. Right, so it was about 15B, right, of RWA TVL, right, I guess, at the time, and the BTC ETFs will kind of kick this whole thing off, right? So we kind of wrote it up from there, and not that long ago, I just took it again. Now we're at 30B, right? And so we've seen the rise of RWAs go like very, very quickly, and this is why people are ultimately excited about this thing. And the reason why, again, is this because the RWA amount actually is huge, right? And we need a story, truthfully, right? So derivatives are talking about 1,000 trillion, real estate's 380 trillion, so on and so forth. Right? When you come down to crypto is only 4 trillion today. Right? So it's a tremendous amount of growth we have here. So the idea is very simple. If we can take all these things in the real world, put them on chain, everyone gets rich, I guess, right? That's why people are excited about RWAs. People are excited about putting this stuff on chain because the size of the market can grow. And today, when we're lacking liquidity and lacking markets, right, we're trying to get things to grow more. And you can see it happening in front of us. Right? If you look today across all these things, you can see that there's so many institutions, so many big brands, so many companies now talking about tokenization, talking about RWAs, talking about doing things on chain. Right? But the reality is a little bit different than what we talk about today. Right? You can see Visa and BlackRock and Van Eck and RWA and blah, blah, blah. Right? So everyone's doing and talking things about RWAs. But really the reason why that people are hyped about it is this. This is the BTC chart. Right? So you can see this over time. What's happened is that BTC has been ripping. Right? Been going up a tremendous amount, and that's been why there's been so much excitement about what's going on, because the idea is very simple. Once we have the BTC ETF, money can flow into this, things have been going up, right? So that's the idea, and the reason why it's going up is because of this again, right? Because of Donald Trump, right? And he's one of the reasons, and we can see here over time the headlines rolling in. As he's getting inaugurated, we can see, speculation about things going up, right? And then it's 80,000, now 109, and I think recently we're at like 112-ish, give or take. I think we're a little bit up and down over the last couple of days, right? But that's the idea. BTC's been going up, it's becoming a more institutional asset, money's flowing in, and that's the bridge into more RWA stuff, right? More things coming in on chain. So that's the idea, kind of what's going on here, right? But unfortunately, despite the fact that like tokens are up, RWA's up, and like BTC's up, every day I'll open my phone and I look more like this, right? And it's because despite the fact that RWA isn't up and BTC's up and everything's up, alts look like shit, right? Everything is kind of going down, everything's sideways, right? And it's kind of just not very, very good. So that's ultimately why, right? Things have been mixed and people are started shifting away and shifting our story to a little bit more about what are things that we can do that are real, what is based in reality, and what can we actually talk about. So, it's a little bit like this when you're, doing the fancy trick to think, oh yeah, Trump's in, everything's going up, and ultimately alts are still down, right? So, but what are we talking about here? Now, the reason why it's a bit of an open question is we've heard about this tokenization story before, right? Every cycle we talk about security tokens, we talk about all this nonsense. It's always the same shit, and the question is it different now? Right? So if you look across this, you can see this is an old article talking about like what's the benefit of tokenization. It's really focused around this comment, operational efficiency, right? And this back office stuff, right? And by putting it on chain, somehow you increase liquidity and transparency and all these things, right? And that's the idea, that's what people talk about. But again, is it real or is it just a story, right? Because if you flash backwards, right, you can see here is an old post from 2022 that the story is the exact same thing last time around. We're talking about real estate tokenization. We're talking about HELOCs and taking VC venture funds and putting on chain. And somehow by putting it on chain, all this stuff is meant to get better, right? But clearly it doesn't work, right? If you look today at the different funds out there, the headlines are the exact same nonsense, right? We're still doing the same thing. We're still talking about real estate on chain and ESG funds, and it's all the same kind of stuff. It's all the same stuff, right? Apparently, like you can now buy Nigerian real estate on chain, which is like, the truth is like, who wants to do that, right? So like, anyway, there's just a lot of stuff that's happening in the cycle that's the same as last time. So the question is it different? Is it not, right? Or is it the same story that we're just trying to shill ourselves again, right? And this is one example of what's going on here. This is RWA XYZ, right? And it shows you, here's BITL. It's one of the largest tokenized T-bill funds out there, right? And you can see here, the change here this time is that potentially there's actually real money here, right? We've got $2 billion in value locked into this thing, which is great. Now, the problem with this is this. There's still no users, right? And we know in crypto, 90 wallets is probably 9 users, right? And so what this means in reality is that even though in quote unquote, we're like tokenizing a lot of things, there's a lot of money coming in, there's no real usage. So anyone talking about looping, anyone talking about lending, anyone talking about RWA as the thing is not looking at reality. It's not a thing yet. Doesn't mean it won't be, right? But it's just to say, it's still very, very early. It's still happening in front of our eyes, right? You look at this again today. Look at OUSG, right? Again, both of us are partners of ours, good friends, not knocking them at all. But just to say, again, same thing. A couple $100 million on chain, right? 76 holders, right? So it's about 6 people, right? And we all know what this is. It's a foundation aping 20 million or whatever into this thing. This is what it actually is today. So this idea that RWAs are here and we're all using them and things, I can guarantee if I ask the crowd right now, who's holding BITL, I guarantee it's 0 people, right? And so, sure, we're all excited about tokenization and what it could do and what could happen and how this could change things and blah, blah, blah. But again, if we look at the reality on the ground today, right, it's mostly a story. It's not quite in reality yet, Now, when we look at this again, the thing I actually care about is not the total number of dollars, because it's actually not hard to just mint a bunch of money on chain. What's harder to do is focus on this number, the total number of asset holders, right? This is the number that matters. And today it's about 400,000 asset holders, excluding stablecoins. Stablecoins is its own thing, of course, right? And the reason and the way you sort of like, change the story here is if, we think mostly today about RWAs as just a version of on-chain TradFi, right? And these numbers are a little bit out of date, right? But the view here is very simple. When you do on-chain TradFi, which is 90% of the work is off-chain today, if anyone's tried to subscribe to BITL or any of these things, right, it's actually, again, it's not bad, but it's mostly off-chain. I'm dealing in email, I'm dealing in KYC, all kinds of nonsense. You get on here, you can't transfer, you can't do anything, right? And so what you're doing is just really taking something in the real world, putting it on-chain in the exact same way. When you do that, you have decent TVL numbers, bad holder numbers, right? But when you do it in a crypto-native way, right, and these are not perfect analogies, but if you do it in a crypto-native way, it's permissionless, open, composable, and it sort of leans into the principles of crypto, right? You can see the TVL is much higher and the holder base is much higher, right? And so, again, it's very simple, right? When you're building for a market, the market today is all on-chain people. There are no institutions here yet. It's beginning to change, right? But they're on the sell side, not the buy side, right? So if you're trying to sell a market, sell a new product to people, then finding out how to market to them is the important thing. And when you build a product that's suited for the people here, then you get real usage. And when you don't, you get okay usage, right? So that's the thing that we need to change and adapt our mentality to here. And so by doing this and by focusing on what the crypto native philosophy is, it's liquid, permissionless, and composable, right? Versus doing something that's just another version of TradFi, right? And again, it's not to say one's worse or one bad than the other. You have to lean into both to really make it work. You can't just throw away you can't throw away the regulatory stuff, but you can't lean into it 100% to make it completely useless, right? The thing that we care about, again, is this number here. So when you look and sort by networks today, right, and chains by RWA holders, right, Plume is the number 1 out there, right? So we focus entirely on making it very easy to take things in the real world, combine them and make them feel like crypto so people actually use them, right? And so that's the point and that's the whole story today. When we think about RWAs today, the current implementation, the current sort of articulation of what this is, in my opinion, is wrong, and that's why it's going to 0. And to me, it's, again, focusing on this idea. What's crypto native? What's just a version of on-chain TradFi? And I think the analogy here is very simple, right? It's a stablecoin, right? The stablecoin is the number 1 RWA in the world and the only RWA that matters by any meaning, by any measure, right? It's actually used everywhere, right? Every country in the world is now trying to do one. Every company is trying to do one, right? And the numbers are far superior to anything happening in RWAs, right? So if you look at this, the reason why the stablecoin is so much better is because the stablecoin is not an RWA. The stablecoin is a stablecoin. It's just crypto, right? You just use it however you want. You don't even know that it's backed by anything, right? The largest stablecoin in the world, we are not even sure what's behind the scenes. The idea that it might be USD is enough, right? But it's useful. And it's done in a form factor that people actually like and understand, right? And so because of that, right, it's transcended the branding of an RWA and it's just become its own thing. It's a descriptive name, a stablecoin, versus a categorical name, which is an RWA, right? So that's the idea here, right? The idea is pretty simple. If we actually want to grow crypto and grow RWAs, you have to do two things. Number one, we have to focus on crypto natives, right, and build for the market here today to get usage and velocity and adoption, right? And then number two, then you can onboard the rest of the world, just like with a stablecoin today, right? It's taken 10 years. And in that 10 years, now people are talking about cross-border payments and remittance and all kinds of stuff. In the beginning, stablecoins were just used to move money across exchanges, right? Solving for crypto natives. So that's the idea, right? We have to kind of build for this first to get things going, right? Because $2 billion to Larry Fink and BlackRock means nothing, right? It's a $12 trillion asset manager. They make tiny, tiny bips on the fund. We need to show them way more usage and velocity for them to actually get interested in this thing. Otherwise, we'll get stuck in proof of concept land. Right. So going back to it, now how does this matter for us? Plume today, we build the largest RWA ecosystem and network for crypto natives, right? In a year, we've built the biggest ecosystem in RWAs, over 200 projects building on us. From these slides a little bit out of date, but we have a couple $100 million in TVL now. We've got the largest community and following, so across socials, and then of course across our user base as well, right? And so when it comes to RWAs, if you talk about real RWA adoption and usage, right, we are the only ones that have done anything meaningful here yet, right? We're backed by some of the best investors out here as well. So that's the idea, right? What we do is we combine multiple things together. We've got a tokenization engine. We've got our own custom EVM chain, right? We've got a big network of liquidity providers, the largest community again, and the largest ecosystem. By combining all these things together, right, the institutional folks can come in and actually deploy and actually find usage and adoption for their products versus not, right? So that's the idea, that we pick all these things to make it very simple. If you talk to any TradFi institution out there, the last thing we want to do is manage 10 different deployments across a bunch of different networks, right? We make it very easy to combine this whole thing into one, right? So the idea for Plume is very simple. There's three things. Number one, you can tokenize anything you want. Number two, then you capitalize it through our network. And number three, you can distribute it through DeFi and make it useful, right? We work with Morpho, work with a bunch of folks to make looping and lending very easy across this thing. So that's the idea, right? So whereas many folks are taking the blockchain, quote unquote, trying to bring it to the real world, right, for people to use, what we're doing is bringing the real world to crypto, right? So it's the inverse, and through there, we can then loop back into this. But you got to start with the bottom, and that's why we say the RWA today in the current format is going to zero, right? So we have the biggest ecosystem today. It crosses everything. So collectibles, alternative assets, this, and so what this means is you can get anything from Apollo's private credit fund. Apollo is one of the biggest asset managers in the world, right? It's a $700 billion fund. Their largest deployment of ACRED to date has been on Plume, over $50 million, right? So bigger than every other network. So you can get everything like this, which is a very tier one product, right, out to on Plume itself, or you can get things like durians, right? We work with Data Durian, which is a Southeast Asian, Southeast Asian farm, right? And so you can get a bunch of durians out here and buy those as well. So that's the idea, right? It's a mix of anything. What we think about is a very easy way to click buttons and interact with the real world versus this kind of classic like TradFi Wall Street on chain, right? Again, because of that, there are three things you can do on Plume today. Number one is earn, second is trade, and third is speculate, right? These are all kind of normal things people do in crypto, so we take any asset out there that fits its use case and put it into this, right? We focus on community first, right? And that's what we've done. We've really focused on demand side and distribution. And so if you look at this today, we've got, search Plume, you can see the goons everywhere and see a bunch of stuff about us. Someone got a tattoo of our logo on themselves recently. Unfortunately, I had just changed the logo like right after that. But fortunately, they actually got another one right after of our new logo. So anyway, just to say, that's a little bit about Plume. And through thinking about it in this way, we've seen a bunch of TVL come onto Plume. We took our mainnet out about 2 months ago, so we've seen a bunch of growth there. Again, number one from a holder's perspective as well. So I think it's combining both those things that we can begin to drive change and actually make this market work today. Anyway, I've taken enough of your time, so thanks for listening. Appreciate it. I'll catch you guys around.